Very good. But break, not hit back.
Bruce Lee, and then Jean-Claude Van Damme, and then who? After Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is the next? Nobody.
He was called the Beast from the East, but Bolo Yeung was hiding something huge about Bruce Lee. Now, he's breaking his silence about what really went down during Enter the Dragon, the secret fights, the arm wrestling showdown, and the mind-blowing truth about who Bruce Lee really was. Fans are outraged by his confession, but that's not even the craziest part. Today, we're exposing what happened when the cameras stopped rolling. Bolo Yeung was born Yangzi on July 3, 1946, in Guangzhou, China. The country was recovering from World War II while dealing with the Chinese Civil War. Guangzhou had been a major trade city, but years of conflict left it struggling. His father was a businessman, and his mother stayed home to raise the family. Money was tight, and food was often scarce. Like many others at the time, Yeung grew up surrounded by hardship. Survival meant being tough and resourceful. Even as a child, he had a determination that set him apart. While many around him struggled just to get by, he focused on something that gave him purpose: martial arts. At age 10, he began training under local masters. He learned Kung Fu with a focus on Tai Chi and Wing Chun. Tai Chi helped him develop balance and fluid movement. Wing Chun gave him the speed and precision needed for close combat. Martial arts became more than just training. It was his escape from the chaos of daily life. As he got older, another passion took hold: bodybuilding. He was fascinated by strength and the ability to shape the human body. Lifting weights became an extension of his martial arts training. He trained relentlessly, pushing his body to its limits. By his teenage years, his hard work paid off. He became a national powerlifting champion in China, earning recognition for his incredible strength. But even with success in sports, life under communist rule was becoming unbearable. The 1960s were a dangerous time in China. Mao Zedong's policies had led to widespread famine and political purges. Millions suffered under the government's control. Yeung saw no future if he stayed. He needed to escape. His only option was one of the most dangerous routes possible: swimming across the water from mainland China to Hong Kong. The journey was brutal. He swam 4 kilometers, 2.5 miles, through treacherous waters, risking his life with every stroke. Many who attempted the escape drowned. Others were caught and sent back to face punishment. The water was filled with strong currents and pollution, but Yeung kept going. After a grueling struggle, he reached Hong Kong. He had made it to freedom. Starting over in a new city was not easy, but Yeung wasted no time. He found work as a gym instructor while continuing his martial arts and bodybuilding training. In Hong Kong, his physique and discipline stood out. In 1970, he won the title of Mr. Hong Kong, a championship he dominated for 10 years until 1980. This was more than just a title. It was proof of his unmatched strength and dedication. People started calling him the Chinese Hercules, a name that perfectly captured his powerful presence. His strength went beyond looks. As a powerlifting champion in mainland China, he recorded a deadlift of over 660 pounds. That kind of raw power made him stand out, and it wasn't long before filmmakers took notice. His massive build and intense presence made him the perfect fit for martial arts cinema. Shaw Brothers Studio saw his potential and brought him into their world. Even as his acting career grew, he never stepped away from fitness. It remained a core part of his life, making him a lasting symbol of strength and discipline. His first major step into films came in 1970 with The Heroic Ones, directed by Chang Che. He played a menacing fighter, a role that felt natural for someone with his physique. The film was a success, and soon, Shaw Brothers started casting him in more projects. He became known for playing villains, the kind of characters that didn't need many words to intimidate. In The Deadly Duo, 1971, and Angry Guest, 1972, he fully embraced that image, proving himself as one of the most fearsome antagonists in martial arts cinema. The timing of his rise couldn't have been better. Martial arts films were exploding worldwide. Five Fingers of Death, 1972, made $400 million on a budget of just $850,000, proving how massive the genre had become. Yeung wasn't in that film, but its success opened doors for actors like him. However, his time with Shaw Brothers didn't last long. By 1973, he left the studio, looking for new opportunities. Those early roles had already made him one of the most recognizable villains in the industry. Then came the meeting that changed everything. In 1971, Yeung was filming a Winston cigarettes commercial when he met Bruce Lee. At the time, Lee was already becoming an international star, while Yeung was still finding his place in the industry. That chance encounter led to a lifelong friendship between two legends of martial arts cinema. Bolo Yeung had seen many great fighters, but Bruce Lee was different. He was fast, precise, and completely unpredictable. Even among elite martial artists, no one moved like him. At first, Bolo wasn't sure if Bruce had the raw strength to match his technique. Bruce was lean, not built like a powerhouse, and that made Bolo wonder if he could generate real power. That doubt didn't last long. During one of their training sessions, Bolo decided to test Bruce's Jeet Kune Do skills. Before he could even react, Bruce had already closed the distance. In an instant, he lightly tapped Bolo's cheek with his foot. It wasn't a hard strike, but it didn't need to be. It was a message. Bruce could land a hit whenever he wanted. His speed and control were beyond anything Bolo had ever experienced. That moment changed everything. From then on, their respect for each other only grew. They spent a lot of time together while filming Enter the Dragon in 1973. Whenever they had a break, they trained. But it wasn't just about fighting. Bruce wasn't only a martial artist. He was a thinker. He was always pushing himself to be better, and he wanted the same for the people around him. Their conversations went beyond combat. They talked about personal struggles, future projects, and philosophies on life. Bolo later said that Bruce's way of thinking left a lasting impression on him. Bruce's generosity also changed Bolo's life. He personally invited him to be part of Enter the Dragon, a decision that turned Bolo from a local Hong Kong actor into an international star. Before that, Bolo was known as a bodybuilder and had appeared in smaller Hong Kong films. But after the film's success, he became one of the most recognized faces in martial arts cinema. Bruce didn't just cast Bolo in the film. He made sure he had the tools to succeed. He helped him refine his techniques for the camera and guided him through the filming process. Bruce believed in surrounding himself with people who shared his passion and dedication, and he saw that in Bolo. Even though Bruce was at the peak of his fame, he never stopped supporting others. Years later, Bolo spoke about how much this opportunity meant to him. He called it one of the most important moments of his career. The set of Enter the Dragon had its challenges, but it also created some legendary stories. One of the most famous moments happened when an extra challenged Bruce to a real fight. The man wanted to see if Jeet Kune Do was effective in an actual fight. The answer came in seconds. Bruce delivered a high kick so fast that no one even saw it coming. The extra had no chance. Bolo remembered how often people underestimated Bruce because of his calm and friendly nature. But if someone pushed him, Bruce would show them why he was one of the greatest martial artists in the world. In another incident, an extra insulted Bruce during a break. Bruce didn't get angry. He simply accepted the challenge, took the man down with ease, and walked away. He didn't fight to prove a point. He fought because he knew he could end it without unnecessary violence. Even when they weren't filming, Bruce and Bolo trained together, but their sessions weren't just about fighting. Bruce shared the deeper philosophies behind Jeet Kune Do. He believed in adapting to every situation instead of following rigid techniques. He focused on efficiency rather than tradition. These ideas stuck with Bolo for years. Bolo Yeung's rise to fame began with Enter the Dragon. a film that changed martial arts cinema forever. Released on August 19, 1973, it was the first martial arts movie co-produced by an American studio, Warner Brothers, and Hong Kong's Golden Harvest. With a budget of just $850,000, no one expected it to become a global sensation, but it did. The film earned over $350 million and introduced Western audiences to Bruce Lee's unmatched screen presence. But it also introduced them to Bolo Yeung, a villain unlike any they had seen before. Playing Han's enforcer, Bolo Yeung delivered a performance that defined his career. His role was not just about fighting, it was about dominance. With his massive physique and cold, silent intensity, he embodied raw power. One of the most brutal scenes in the film showed him punishing 4 guards who had failed to capture Bruce Lee's character. With terrifying ease, he crushed ribs and snapped necks, making it clear that Han's empire was ruled by fear. Despite the ferocity of his on-screen presence, Yeung was known for his kindness off-camera. He and Bruce Lee developed a strong friendship during filming. Both men shared a passion for martial arts and fitness, often training together between takes. But just weeks before the film's release, tragedy struck. Bruce Lee's sudden passing on July 20, 1973, shocked the world. What should have been a triumphant moment for martial arts cinema became bittersweet. While Han was the film's mastermind, Bolo was the character that truly struck fear into the audience. His loyalty to Han made him a relentless force, but his final fight against John Saxon's character, Roper, showed that brute strength was not enough. The fight started with Bolo overpowering Roper, choking him and tossing him around like a rag doll. But Roper fought back, using speed and strategy to turn the fight in his favor. In the end, Bolo was defeated. This became a pattern in Yeung's career. He often played villains who appeared unstoppable, but were eventually brought down. Yet losing in movies never stopped him from winning in real life. Enter the Dragon made him a star, and it gave him a name that would stay with him forever. Born Yangzi, he officially took on Bolo as his stage name after the film's success. Over the next several decades, he appeared in more than 100 films, including Bloodsport, where he played another legendary villain, Chong Li. Even outside of Hollywood, the name Bolo followed him. It became a symbol of strength and intimidation, something audiences associated with his larger-than-life presence. After Bruce Lee's sudden passing in 1973, the martial arts film industry changed overnight. Bruce had been the biggest star, and his death left a void that studios rushed to fill. This gave rise to Bruceploitation, a wave of films that tried to keep his legacy alive with look-alike actors, exaggerated fight scenes, and stories that felt familiar to fans. Bolo Yeung, already known for his role as the silent but dangerous henchman in Enter the Dragon, became a key figure in this movement. He starred in films like Bruce's Deadly Fingers, The Clones of Bruce Lee, and Enter Three Dragons. His massive build and cold stare made him a natural villain, and these roles helped him refine his signature style: calm, calculated, and brutally efficient. One of his standout roles in this era came in Enter Three Dragons, 1979. The film followed 3 martial artists teaming up to fight crime, and Bolo played a powerful antagonist whose physical presence made every fight scene feel intense. In Way of the Dragon 2, 1980, another Bruceploitation film, he once again proved why he was one of the most intimidating figures in martial arts cinema. These movies were often dismissed as cheap imitations, but for Bolo, they were a chance to sharpen his craft. He was no Bruce Lee copycat. He was building something of his own. Then came Bloodsport in 1988. This was the film that changed everything. Starring opposite Jean-Claude Van Damme, Bolo played Chong Li, the undefeated champion of the underground Kumite tournament. He wasn't just strong, he was terrifying. He barely spoke, but his presence alone was enough to strike fear into his opponents. When he did talk, it was short and direct. Lines like, "You are next," became legendary.
You are next.
His brutal fighting style, combined with his arrogance, made him one of the most unforgettable villains in martial arts history. The final showdown between Frank Dux and Chong Li was one of the greatest fights ever filmed. Van Damme brought speed and agility. Bolo brought sheer power. Every move felt real. Every moment built suspense. When Bloodsport became a cult hit, Bolo Yeung became a household name. 3 years later, he reunited with Van Damme in Double Impact, 1991. This time he played Moon, another ruthless villain, proving once again that no one did menacing characters better. But despite his reputation as the ultimate on-screen villain, Bolo wasn't limited to just one type of role. In Shoot Fighter, Fight to the Death, 1992, and its sequel, he played Master Shingo, a mentor rather than a brute. This was a rare chance to see him in a more complex role, showing wisdom instead of pure aggression. Long before Bloodsport made him an international star, Bolo had already explored the world of filmmaking behind the camera. In 1977, he directed Bolo, a film packed with action and themes of justice and revenge. While details on the movie remain scarce, it was a bold step for an actor transitioning into directing. 2 years later, he took on an even more ambitious project with writing Kung Fu, 1979, also known as Chinese Samson. This wasn't just another Kung Fu movie. It introduced the concept of calligraphy Kung Fu, where fighters used movements inspired by Chinese calligraphy during battle. Mixing philosophy with martial arts, the film was unlike anything else at the time. It wasn't widely recognized, but it showed that Bolo wasn't just an actor. He was a creative force who wanted to push boundaries. Bolo Yeung spent years playing the ultimate villain. His massive frame and intense stare made him the perfect antagonist in martial arts films. In Enter the Dragon, 1973, he was a ruthless enforcer. In Bloodsport, 1988, he was the unbeatable Chong Li. For years, audiences knew him as the silent, menacing force that heroes had to defeat. But by the late 1980s, something changed. Yeung started taking on roles that weren't just about power and intimidation. He began playing characters with depth, wisdom, and even compassion. This shift didn't just change his career, it gave him a new kind of legacy. The transition started with Tiger Claws, 1991. Yeung played Chong, a martial artist caught in a dark world of crime and corruption. He was still dangerous, but this time there was something more. The character had layers, showing hints of regret and introspection. Then, in Ironheart, 1992, Yeung fully stepped into the role of a mentor. As Master Shingo, he trained a young fighter who was drawn into underground battles. His presence was just as strong as before, but instead of being the villain, he was the guiding force. Audiences saw a different side of him, one that still carried strength, but now had wisdom behind it. His role as a mentor became even more defined with Shoot Fighter, Fight to the Death, 1993. Playing Sensei Shingo, he trained young fighters, teaching them discipline and perseverance. The film was so successful that it led to Shoot Fighter 2 in 1996, where Yeung continued in the role. Around the same time, he appeared in TC 2000, 1993, as Master Sumai. This time, he wasn't just guiding fighters, he was leading them through a futuristic world on the brink of disaster. These roles proved that Yeung was more than just a powerhouse. He could bring depth and emotion to his characters, showing that strength wasn't just about physical dominance. His transformation didn't just happen on screen. Off camera, Yeung connected with his fans in a new way. He attended martial arts conventions, hosted workshops, and spoke to younger generations about discipline and respect. His years of playing villains had made him an icon of power. Now, he was becoming a symbol of wisdom. Martial artists and actors who once feared his characters now saw him as an inspiration. By the time the 1990s ended, Yeung had done something few action stars ever manage. He changed the way people saw him. Instead of being remembered only as the unstoppable villain, he became a respected mentor, both in films and in real life. His journey from feared antagonist to trusted teacher showed that true strength isn't just about defeating opponents, it's about guiding others and leaving behind a legacy that lasts beyond the screen. Bolo Yeung has always lived with discipline, and that hasn't changed even at 78. Though he retired from acting, martial arts, and bodybuilding, he still stays active. He lifts weights and practices Tai Chi to keep his body strong and his mind sharp. Fitness has been a part of his life for decades, and he has never let go of it. His family is just as important to him. He has 3 children, David, Danny, and Deborah, and he remains close to all of them. His son David followed in his footsteps, winning bodybuilding championships before becoming a strength coach for MMA fighters. In interviews, David has often said that his father taught him discipline and resilience, 2 qualities that shaped his own career. Even though Bolo Yeung has stepped away from Hollywood, he is still a respected figure. Fans around the world continue to celebrate his work in Enter the Dragon and Bloodsport. Social media is filled with tributes, and his influence on martial arts films remains strong. His strength was never just for show. He earned the nickname the Beast from the East and Chinese Hercules for a reason. During his peak, he could deadlift over 700 pounds. That kind of power didn't come easy. He started bodybuilding in the 1960s and went on to dominate the Mr. Hong Kong competition, holding the title for 10 years, from 1970 to 1980. This success led him to Hollywood, where his size and intense screen presence made him the perfect villain. But bodybuilding wasn't his only strength. He was also a powerlifting champion in mainland China, proving that his strength was as real as it looked on screen. His training style combined modern strength techniques with traditional martial arts. He focused on heavy lifts, like squats and bench presses, while also practicing Wing Chun and Tai Chi for balance and flexibility. This gave him an edge, making him not just strong, but also fast and controlled. Even today, bodybuilders and martial artists study his training methods, looking up to him as both an athlete and a martial artist. On screen, he was terrifying. Off-screen, he was known as a kind and humble man. Many who worked with him called him a gentle giant. Martial artist Harry Mock, who acted alongside him, praised his professionalism and respect for others. His children have also spoken about how he balanced his demanding career with being a dedicated father. One of his closest friendships was with Bruce Lee. Their connection started during the filming of Enter the Dragon, but went beyond the set. They respected each other's skills and often talked about fitness and martial arts. Years later, Bolo formed another strong bond with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which led to their legendary fight in Bloodsport. Bolo Yeung always spoke highly of Bruce Lee, especially when it came to speed. During the filming of Enter the Dragon in 1973, he saw something that left him in awe. Bruce wasn't just fast, he was on a completely different level. Bolo later said that Bruce could finish a fight in seconds, moving so quickly that most opponents wouldn't even have time to react. Bruce's attention to detail made him just as impressive behind the scenes. When choreographing fight sequences, he planned every strike with near-perfect timing. He knew exactly when to attack and when to hold back, making sure the movements looked fast, but still clear on camera. This level of dedication was a big reason why Enter the Dragon became one of the greatest martial arts films ever made. Over the years, rumors started spreading about a rivalry between the two. Some fans believed Bolo and Bruce had real tension during filming, but Bolo was quick to shut down those stories. There was no jealousy or conflict. Instead, he described Bruce as a perfectionist who inspired everyone around him to work harder. They may have been enemies on screen, but off-screen, they shared the same passion for martial arts. Another myth suggested that they had real fights to test their skills, but Bolo made it clear that this was just fan speculation. They did spar a few times, but it was always friendly. One story, however, kept resurfacing, an arm wrestling match between them. According to reports, Bruce won, even though he was much smaller. Whether that was true or just another legend, it only added to the respect Bolo had for him. Decades later, Bolo still speaks about Bruce with admiration. he considers him one of the greatest martial artists in history, not just for his speed and strength, but for his dedication to the art itself. By sharing his experiences, Bolo helped preserve the legacy of a man whose influence on martial arts will never fade.